Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be watching a video. Let me just make sure that my mic is not clipping. Okay, we're good. We're going to be watching a video and you are going to all see something that is very important. Okay. We 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 are supposed to be good. All right, so I'm going to draw this down. If I do, that's what shows. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. So I haven't figured out this OBS software. I haven't mastered it yet, so I apologize for the delay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down and I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to play this video. It's about libertarianism. And as you all know, I'm a Calvinist, Calvinistic Christian. I do not believe in free will, but what free will am I talking about? Libertarian free will. I believe that it is a tradition of men. Remember, Paul says we should beware of philosophy, which is not in accordance with Christ, but is in accordance with the traditions of men. So there is a philosophy that is in accordance with Christ, and there is a philosophy that is in accordance with man's tradition. And this is one of them, free will, libertarian free will, to be exact. So we're going to be watching this video together, and I'm going to be doing a small commentary on what you will all hear, point by point. Let's go.
What is libertarianism? Libertarianism is the philosophical position that argues that some, I repeat, some human decisions and actions result from free will.
Just to briefly comment on that, Christians are not supposed to believe that some of their decisions and actions are the result of free will. Because by saying some, and he's going to explain this in a moment, libertarians believe that some of their actions are determined because they believe that the cause and effect universe that we live in, there are some natural laws that affect our decisions and affect our actions, but not all of them. And I would agree that not all natural laws affect our decision making and actions. That's not my argument. My argument is that none of us are free from God. None of us are free from the sovereign king of the universe, the controller, sustainer, and creator of all things. But notice he's going to say that some of our choices are free. Some of them. We are going to be learning about the three arguments for this position. And remember this in your mind. Free from God. Are you free from God? Am I free from God? Some of our actions are determined in the free willers or free will libertarianism because the other actions are determined by natural laws. But I'm not arguing for natural laws, everyone. I'm arguing for God as the first cause, transcendent cause of all things. But let's go.
Indeed, libertarians admit that some of our actions are determined by the natural law of cause and effect.
Right, right. Not going to repeat myself. That's true.
And therefore not all of our actions and decisions are free. For example, when you go to the doctor's office and he or she, tests your reflexes by using the little hammer to hit your knee, when your leg kind of kicks out, that is not a result of free will. You didn't choose willfully to, to do that. You're not in control of that. Rather, your leg kicks out as a result of cause and effect. It is determined. And we can use the same logic for, if we visited a haunted house and let's say someone comes in from behind you, says boo, and then you scream out in fright. When you scream out, one could argue that that is a determined response, that someone said boo, that was the cause, and the effect was that you screamed, and that was, not a choice. It was not something that was deliberate. It was just a reaction that resulted from the laws of cause and effect. Nevertheless, libertarians believe that human beings are capable of free will, and that some of our decisions and actions are free.
And notice, free from natural laws of cause and effect. That's what he's arguing for. I'm not arguing for being free from natural laws of cause and effect, because I can agree with that. I can agree that us human beings can make decisions and actions despite natural law. However, as a Christian, I will say point blank, none of us are free from God. God is the creator, sustainer, and determiner of all things. And if you say that God isn't, then you are a semi-deist. You are saying that God is just like the causes and effects, in that he causes some of our actions, but not all, in that he determines some of our actions, but not all. And if that's the case, then you are advocating for God having an on and off relationship with your actions, in that when you make actions, when you make decisions, God is hands off. My argument is, if God is ever hands off, you cease to exist. Because God upholds the universe by the word of his power, Hebrews 1:3. In him we live and move and have our being, Acts 17:28. In him all things hold together, Colossians 1:17. And Revelation 4:11. Worthy are you, our Lord and our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and because of your will, they existed and were created. So you being sustained by God to stay in existence is a direct cause of your actions, because God's knowledge is based upon his actions, and he knows what you are going to do. God basically knows the results of his actions. And since God knows the result of his actions, you are not free. God knows that by sustaining you, you will make a particular decision. God knows that by sustaining you, you will act out a particular decision. So he is the ultimate cause of your acting out a decision, or acting out an action, or making a choice. Because if it wasn't for God sustaining you and keeping you in existence, you wouldn't have made that choice in the first place. So God is the ultimate and transcendent cause of all things, because he sustains all things. He's never hands off. If he is ever hands off, we all cease to exist.
Now, there are three major libertarian arguments that try to advocate this position.
Let's hear them. Let's hear and let's see if any of these arguments can prove that anyone has free will. And when I say free will, I'm going to say again, free from God. Are you free from God as the ultimate cause of all things when you make your actions? Let's find out.
The argument from deliberation, the argument from agent causation, and the argument from moral responsibility. So let's review each of these in chronological order. So the argument of deliberation was conceived by 20th century philosopher Corliss Lamont. And he argues that we are capable of free will because we have the ability to deliberate. And deliberation, properly defined, is the unique ability humans have to consciously and objectively weigh the pros and cons of a decision and then make a choice. So in other words, we have this ability to kind of,
Did you catch that? You see what happened there? And tell me if that disproves my position. Corliss Lamont argues that we are capable of free will because we have the ability of deliberation, or the ability to deliberate. And deliberation, the unique ability of humans to consciously and objectively weigh the pros and cons of a decision and then make a choice. That is just proving that we are free from natural law. But that does not prove that we are free from God, because who upholds you? Who sustains you? Who keeps you in existence while you deliberate? Who keeps your conscience in existence while you consciously and objectively weigh your pros and cons? Who sustains you? Who keeps you alive? Who keeps you breathing, keeps your heart pumping, keeps your brain thinking? God. And since his action will result in you making a decision, then you are reacting to God. God is not reacting and is never reacting to you. If you read in Scripture and see where God reacts, then God is simply doing that which he has already determined before the foundation of the world to do. So he is acting in time, not reacting. Or one could say he is interacting in time, not reacting. You react, we react. And if this is supposed to be the ability of deliberation to make choices and make decisions by weighing pros and cons, by looking at the consequences of our action, whatever we choose, our choice has not been proven to be without God being the sustainer and creator of all that takes place, or planner and purposer of all that takes place. So, argument one does not prove that we are free from God. Sorry, guys.
so in other words, voices, and this will be kind of that would, determine.
So it is the ability to, despite mental state, emotional state, environmental surrounding, physical laws, we can choose despite all of that. Hey, I'm not disagreeing. What I am disagreeing with is that we are free from God.
Men are and
We got to go to
does and feels too after he has made a decision that he could have decided differently. That is
got to
why
go to
regret
argument
or
2.
remorse.
Let's read this. There is the unmistakable intuition of virtually every human being. He is free to make the choices he does, and that the deliberations leading to those choices are also free-flowing. The normal man feels too, after he has made a decision, that he could have decided differently. That is why regret or remorse for a past choice can be so disturbing. Now, notice, the man feels that he could have done something differently. And that's my argument, that free will is an illusion. It's an illusion. We feel like we're free, but we're not. We're not free from God. God's act of sustaining us results in us doing and deciding what we do. And since if God stops sustaining us, we will go out of existence, it logically necessitates that we not be free. It logically necessitates that free will does not exist, because we can't be free from God. If we are free from God, anything that's free from God doesn't exist. Just put it like that.
For a past choice can be so disturbing. All right, so we've talked about the argument from deliberation. So let's.
Now, this is by far the most ridiculous one I've heard. But let's get into it.
Let's talk about the argument from agent causation. And this was conceived by 20th century philosopher Roderick.
I'll go fast. I go faster than him. 20th century philosopher Roderick Chisholm. He argues that humans have free will because we have the ability to make choices ex nihilo. Nihilo. Ex nihilo. Out of nothing. What? What did we just read? The implications of this is that God does not know your future actions, because God can only know that which he has determined. And if God has determined all our actions, but yet there are some actions that we can make out of nothing, and by out of nothing we mean out of God as well, without God as well. It's out of nothing. It's not dependent upon anything. And if it's not dependent upon, it's like, and he's going to go on to talk about how we are God-like. Here it is. Thereby, human beings have a unique and mysterious God-like ability to make free choices. Look, if we have a God-like ability to make choices, then that means we are making choices independent of God. And if we make choices independent of God, then it logically follows that we are making choices ex nihilo. But if we're making choices out of nothing, meaning independent of everything, then that means we can't make any choices, because guess what? We wouldn't exist. It would be an example of God taking his hands off or stopping his sustenance of the universe for us to make a choice out of nothing. But since God can't do that, none of us have free will. And let me define what I mean by can't. When I say God can't do something, I am not making reference to his degree of power, but rather I am making reference to his nature. God has positive inabilities and negative inabilities. Well, sorry, when we speak about God's abilities, we can only speak of them in two ways. Negative abilities, meaning God can't do something because he's not strong enough, which is completely fallacious. And number two, God can't do something because he's God. That's a positive limitation. Negative limitation, God can't do something because he's not strong enough. Positive limitation, God can't do something because he's God. I am not saying God can't take his hands off and you still exist as a degree of power in that he's not strong enough to do it. That's not the argument. The argument is God can't do it because he is God. And why am I saying that? Because God is omnipotent. And in Colossians chapter 1, Hebrews chapter 1, and Acts chapter 27, along with Revelation chapter 4, we see the foundational verses for the metaphysical relationship that God has with his creation. And this relationship destroys the notion that God can make a God-like entity who is self-determined, self-caused, self-sustained. And I think he mentioned something earlier here in the notes, because I already watched this video. The human mind has a special metaphysical status in comparison to other natural phenomenon, in that it has the ability to make choices out of nothing. That is messed up. Men are sometimes, but of course not always, self-determined beings. That is, beings which are sometimes the cause of their own behavior. Each of us, when we act, is a prime mover unmoved. I would say everything that I just said in application to God. But do you see? Free will elevates man to the level of God. This this guy, Roderick Chisholm, said that we are self-determined. We determine ourselves. Remember I said in one of my previous videos, the way God knows all things is by determining all things or by learning all things. There are only two options. The other option attempts to use both arguments of these two positions to try and refute the other without taking a position for him or herself. Mention a name, a guy named Leighton Flowers. He likes to talk about how it is wrong to say that God knows things because he determined them. And it's wrong to say that God knows things because he learned them. But he will not present a position. All he says is free will is a mystery and we don't fully understand it, but we know we have it. And you'll hear this argument soon, but I'm giving you biblical justification, logical justification for why free will is impossible. If you have free will apart from God, you will not exist. It's logically necessitated. Since God is the creator and sustainer of all things, he keeps things in existence by his power. If he removes his power from you or from controlling you, you cease to exist. Let's go to argument number 3. Moral responsibility. Now, the first one, that number 2, is the most ridiculous one I've heard because it is downright blasphemous. But this one is the funniest one I've heard. 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant argues that even if we cannot metaphysically prove that we have free will, we should still assume that we have it anyway. Talk about illusion, man. Oh boy. Because at least some philosophers see that you can't prove that free will is a real thing. Okay, watch this. Because if we do not have free will, then none of us can be held morally responsible for our actions. Kant is proposing a pragmatic justification for free will. That adopting a doctrine of free will has certain practical benefits. Let me explain that in the middle because I know it's going through your mind. How can we be held responsible when we are determined? The reason why we can be held responsible is because everything that we do, we wanted to do. We did everything that we want to do. God so happens to be the transcendent cause of all things, including your desires, but you still wanted to do what you did. And God judges us for our sinful desires and the sins that sprung from our sinful desires. Even though he's the transcendent cause of all things, including your desires, you are still the one who desired the evil thing. You operate on the storyline level. God operates on the transcendental level, but he interacts with the world 24/7. And I could probably say 25/8 because it goes beyond time and space, minute by minute, moment by moment. God is sustaining everything. Everything. So this is the most ridiculous and funny one I've heard. In man's desperation to hold on to free will, he is willing to put himself at the level of God. And this is where Leighton Flowers is on this position. He can't prove free will. He just assumes it. And if we ask him how God knows all things, he says we shouldn't ask. And as well, in this video, see, I'm here falling asleep. I'm losing my train of thought. Gotta go to bed. What I was gonna say is that there we go. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh. Free will is an illusion. It doesn't exist. You may feel like you have free will because God created the universe and gave you all your desires and you do according to your desires, so you think you have free will. But God is the one who's in control at all times, moment by moment. Let me finish this up with the conclusion. Contrary to determinist, libertarian argue that some of our decisions and actions are the result from free will, meaning resulted from free will means to make a decision or action without any external factors determining you to do so. Remember, I said God is not only an external factor, he's an internal factor that determines you to do everything that you do. Anyways, Corliss Lamont and Roderick Chisholm argue that the human mind has the ability to break or manipulate the causal chain, which results in free will decisions. How can you break and manipulate the causal chain when God is the one who is in control of the causal chain? Can a little speck of dust break the causal chain of God? No. No. So that doesn't fly. Finally, Immanuel Kant admits that he can never know whether free will is a reality, but we should nonetheless accept it for practical reasons to uphold moral responsibility. Now, this is amazing because it shows you the lengths that people will go to try and prove free will. And I went into the domain of philosophy. I'm sure that this guy, the guy who made this video, is probably a philosopher. He's completely right and correct in everything he said regarding libertarianism. But libertarianism is not taught in the Bible. Everything in the Bible and God's interaction with human beings on a moment-by-moment basis stands as the foundation that free will is. I was determined to yawn just now. Free will is, excuse me, by the way, free will is an illusion. Thank you guys for watching. I had to skip through the video because I have been up all day and right now it's 2:59. Gonna get some sleep and I will see you all next time. Like, share, subscribe. God bless you all. And remember, stay consistent, my friends.